Hello, welcome to our webinar on strategies to guarantee network uptime in remote operations. My name is Martin Provencher. I'm the Global Industry Principal for Mining Metals and Materials at Aviva, and I will be your chair for today's session. So this session is brought to you by BDT, Beyond Digital Transformation. BDT is actually a platform for results-driven mining professionals who want to deploy systems that deliver measurable impacts for their mining operations. Each stream brings together three unique perspectives: mine operations, mining industry partners, and a mining industry supplier. So this stream is about connectivity and communication. And we have three chairs on this stream. Actually, Charles Niabiz from Mika is chairing the session, with Greg Sandblom from Sudbury INO Glencore, and with me, Martin Provencher from Aviva, which is sponsoring the event. So I guess we can start the video now.
The new digital era for industrial organizations is here, and for the mining industry, it is no different. Today's volatile commodity prices, evolving environmental regulations, and declining investment ability mean miners must shift their focus towards operational efficiency to stay ahead of the curve. Safety, social license to operate, and sustainable practices remain at the forefront of all operations. Employee safety and well-being must come first, as well as that of local communities and stakeholders, and the well-being of the very earth in which we dig. So how can a mine be sustainable, keep its workers safe, and maintain the respect and care for all stakeholders? The answer lies in digital transformation, applying digital tools and principles that enable mining companies to make the most of their efforts, to process information and make the best business decisions possible for everyone. Many organizations are attempting to analyze, manage and unify their data, processes and supply chains. The challenge many mining, metals and minerals companies now face is understanding how to bring these principles together in a systematic, comprehensive and intelligent way that will truly transform their operations. As with other industries, it's essential to operate with the highest levels of efficiency, corporate social responsibility, and regulatory compliance. When applied successfully, a digital transformation strategy can accelerate your mining operations, enhance your productivity, reduce your costs, and help you surpass your competition. Increase workforce efficiency by 20% and improve data accuracy by 10 to 20%. But what does it take to implement a successful digital strategy? And where do you focus your efforts to get the greatest returns? First, start with enhancing edge-to-enterprise visibility and control. Then look at how you can optimize your value chain and to understanding the health of your assets. Leading companies have achieved 10% increased production by improving overall equipment effectiveness, 15% reduced cost in maintenance, and 80% reduced safety incidents. Aviva is helping leading companies to drive efficiencies throughout the mining lifecycle. Let us lead you on your digital mining transformation to shape your digital, sustainable future.
Thank you. So welcome to our third panel discussion for the Beyond Digital Transformation, Connectivity and Communication stream. Session 1 explored general challenges and opportunities in connectivity in a remote-first mining environment from the perspective of working remotely. Session 2 explored the details of accessing operations data when working remotely. And today, Session 3, we will be exploring the different strategies mining companies are adopting to guarantee network uptime in a remote operation. So today with me, we have Chris Bertrand from Valley Sudbury. Chris, you might want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Chris Bertrand. I'm with Valley in the technology department, and I'm an enterprise architect. So my role is to ensure that our solutions that are made up of software, hardware, networking components meet the business requirements in a sustainable approach.
Thank you, Chris. And we have Eric L'Heureux from Ambra Solutions. So Eric, you might want to introduce yourself.
Of course. My name is Eric L'Heureux, telecom engineers, CEO of Embra Solutions. And for the past 15 years, Embra Solutions has been designing and deploying wireless technologies for the mining industry. So we're currently deploying roughly 20 new private 4G, 5G a year, and we've been covering over 700 kilometers of underground mining tunnels so far. So we're pretty active in the industry 4.0 right now.
Very good. Thank you very much, Eric. And I will be chairing the session, Martin Provencher, again from Aviva, as the Global Industry Principal for Mining Metals and Materials. So a summary of the activities that we've had so far. I mean, March 22nd, we had a kickoff in-person event, and of course it was streamed on LinkedIn live from Sudbury. On April 18th, we had our second panel or second event where we talked about accessing operations data in remote first mining environment. And today, October 4th, we are talking about strategies to guarantee network uptime in remote operations. Next will be November 22nd, we'll be talking about using operations data to improve decision making for the production and maintenance. Of course, KPIs designed for specific mining activities. And on December 2nd or December 9th, the date is still to be determined, there will be another in-person event that will be streamed live from Toronto. What's unique about our BDT community is that it brings the mining company perspective to the table. It also helps driving industry collaboration, so miners helping miners. And of course, BDT is donating all the profits, so has donated over $100,000 to charity up to date. And this year is the Sudbury Action Center for Youth that is the charity that has been selected for 2022. And of course, thanks to our sponsors, Red Path Mining, contractors and engineers providing full service mining solutions and innovation around the world since 1962, Pace.Global, digital adoption specialist, helping you achieve measurable results with your technology. Aviva, a global leader in industrial software. Glencore, one of the world's largest globally diversified natural resource companies. And Mika, Mining Innovation Commercialization Accelerator Network. So now let's start with today's topic. If you have any question, please bring it to the Restream. Please ask them using the Restream button. We'll be happy to cover those questions. Of course, if we have the authorization and if it's related to the topic, to today's topic. Now, first question to everyone, and we'll start maybe with Chris. So Chris, what are the key concepts when we talk about remote operations?
So I think the first thing to kind of understand is that Valley's on a voyage, and I can talk really well about what we're doing now. Where that leads us into the future starts to get a little more gray because there's different business drivers that are going to come into play and constraints, of course, from industry. But today, I can say that we're concentrating on underground for remote operations. Eventually, we'll move outside of the underground piece and cover surface plants and logistics, that type of thing. I'd say in the underground, we're built around concepts of monitoring activities against schedule and providing, direction for course correction. And this is closely aligned with the concepts of short interval control within, the mining industry. Teleremote equipment operations are not currently in scope for our remote operation center. We have what we call it IROC, Integrated Remote Operation Center concept in Valley in the Sudbury location, and we're starting to monitor the mines within this area with that IROC process. As I said, the interplant and logistics surface plants will be added at a point in the future. These processes are probably less complex because there's a lot more repetition to the process, whereas mining activities around the schedule are a lot harder to control and maintain. So we won't necessarily use the findings that we have. It's not going to be a cut and paste from underground to surface plants. We'll have to do some analysis of those areas and look for bottlenecks and decision points as we move outside of the mining.
Great, thanks a lot, Chris. And I think we have a video that you were allowed to share from Valley, so maybe we can share that with the audience now.
At Valley, we continue to invest in new innovations and new technologies that will transform our business, improving our safety and productivity, and strengthening our reputation in mining leadership. One of our boldest investments and commitments to innovation is the new Integrated Remote Operations Center, or IROC, located at our North Atlantic Operational Headquarters in Sudbury, Ontario. What exactly is IROC? IROC is a cornerstone in data and communications. This centralized center will streamline and strengthen our communications with leaders and frontline workers across all our mines. IROC is like an air traffic control tower for our mining operations. Linked through underground digital connectivity, a network of multi-screen computer stations will show IROC specialists a complete picture of every aspect of our operations, from the rock face to meeting customer delivery. This 24/7 continuous, real-time IROC data will allow us to quickly update and adjust our operational plans so that our workforce at site can continue to drive our mining operations safely. It will also improve our ability to analyze recurring problems, quickly developing effective solutions with reliable data to reflect our commitment to continuous improvement. Most importantly, IROC will bring greater safety visibility like never before. In the event of an emergency, real-time information about frontline personnel and equipment will reduce response times and help us develop a clear plan of action to return our workers to surface and ensure they all go home safe. In our first phase, IROC will connect our Creighton, Coleman, and Totten mines in Sudbury with plans to include our other mines and processing plants across Canada. With the launch of IROC, Valley continues to usher in a new era of technology and innovation, exploring and adapting to new approaches and new technologies that will help us prosper. A stronger, safer future is only a connection away.
That's very good. Thanks a lot, Chris, for sharing that, and thanks to Valley for allowing us to share this video. It gives us a very good overview of what we're talking about when we're talking about remote operations. Now, Eric, from a communication specialist perspective, I mean, what would be the key concepts for you when we're talking about remote operations?
Well, remote operation, of course, for us, it's tied to the backhaul, whether it's fiber optic, microwave, satellite. So for us, of course, the first thing we always check is there any redundant backhaul available, depending on the location of the mine. So this is, of course, the first thing. Because when it comes to monitoring, like Valley is doing, or when it comes to remote control, this is definitely the first thing that we check is redundancy and reliability. And we see more and more minings going to remote operation in order to increase the safety of the workers and, of course, to increase the efficiency. So really it's all about, okay, what is available, where is the mine located, and what are the different options. And this is what basically we help and recommend, and we work with the customers to present some solutions. So this is for us the key concept of a remote operation is analyzing what's in place, what is in there, and what we can do basically.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, returning to Chris, I mean, what kind of services or mining activities can be done remotely? I mean, you shared a video, but are there any specific things that you would like to highlight from a mining perspective?
Well, it really there's lots of possibilities. I guess, as I mentioned earlier, Valley is starting with a level of this monitoring and providing course correction, but we have as well looked at some smaller implementations of teleremote and autonomous for our LHDs or scoops, as we call them here, and some drills. But these remote equipment operations are not part of the IROC scope right now. They were run on separate projects. And I'll maybe have an opportunity to go into this a little deeper later. But for now, the concept of these teleremotes tend to be driven at the plant. So it's not really removing that work from the plant is not a focus for us right now. From a technology point of view, I guess the possibilities are endless, right? So the technology is getting better, whether it's 3D cameras or the ability to give better feedback to somebody who's not physically there in a way to do jobs remotely, I think is getting better and better. I think what we have to figure out from a Vale point of view is what is right for each of the processes. And we want to ensure that we have the right failovers from a production, of course, but also safety, and that we assess this on a case-by-case nature. So what's right for one process in mining might not be the right answer for another process in mining, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, great, thanks. And now, Eric, I mean, what about the network access in remote sites that have basically no network connectivity? If we think about mine sites that are up north or quite remote, I mean, what is it that you can share with us about these things?
No, definitely. Well, a lot of them are connected using satellite. And as you know, before it was using what we call geo satellite, long latency. So a lot of applications were not possible using those satellite because of the latency. And now we see more and more new LEO satellite, which reduce that latency. So that opens up the way to some new use cases that were not possible before. However, we need to keep in mind that, as mentioned by Chris, remote operation still will be done remotely, or will be done on premise, because it requires a lot of bandwidth. And also some application like push to talk requires really low latency. So there's always going to be some application or use cases that will have to be done on premise. But we see more and more options now with those new LEO satellite, with those new backhaul options, the fiber optic, the microwave, which is now getting possible to extend networks to those remote areas. So this is now we see more and more options on the market, which were not available a few years ago. So that's why it changes a lot, the options, and offers new options for the mining companies now.
Very good. And you talked about bandwidth. I mean, what would be the bandwidth that would typically be required for proper remote operations?
So two things. If we do monitoring, like Vale is doing, the bandwidth is fairly low, meaning a few megabits per second is required. When it comes to remote operation, this is where it requires a lot of bandwidth, because this is all about the video, which is streaming from the machine, upload, in the upload direction. So for every machine that we're remotely controlling, you need between 5 to 10 megabit per second per machine. So that's a lot of bandwidth. So this is why sometimes we have to do a remote operation on premise if we don't have a good enough backhaul. If we have a good backhaul, we see mining companies now remotely controlling machines, but they need like a robust fiber or microwave in order to do this because of the high bandwidth requirement from those machines that are remotely operated.
Very good. Thanks. Thanks, Eric. And Chris, I mean, from a mining operator perspective, any risks related to having people not at site when we're talking about remote operations?
Yeah, so I guess it goes back to my balance argument, right? So we have to find that right balance, and Vale, of course, has an ongoing goal to remove people out of harm's way. The safer we can make people, the better our company is, right? From looking after our personnel, but also from, I guess, from a public relations point of view, we want to do the right thing, and so that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're not putting people in as hard a way that we can take out of that situation. But that doesn't mean, as Eric was saying, that the remote operation has to be hundreds of kilometers away. We need to assess the risk and those failovers that I talked about earlier in those backup processes. Those failovers may necessitate that remote control is still above ground and at site. And I'd say even in those situations where Eric was saying you have very good networking to be able to provide the opportunity to do it 100 kilometers away, you still have that possibility that link goes down, and when it goes down, that is a risk to production. So you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of doing the work remotely and making sure that you have the ability, if the network link goes down, to still operate somehow. And I think that's that balance that we have to think of.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about the underground. I mean, question to Eric: how can we ensure proper communication underground? I mean, as Chris was talking about, this is their main focus for now. But how is it that we can ensure proper communication?
Well, underground communication right now is going under a massive transformation. So up to now, most communication underground were limited to voice using the leaky feeder system. And that technology has been there for the past 20 years. Now, while 4G, 5G is coming to disrupt everything. Of course, you can deploy the Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi provides limited coverage, meaning that you need a lot of Wi-Fi access point to cover a whole underground mine. Whereas 4G, 5G now can cover all of the underground mine up to the face. So we can provide high speed to the face, we can provide high speed to the ramp everywhere. So now that opens up options, and it reduces, of course, the cost of deploying high-speed communication underground. So this is why today we have so many projects to remotely control machines by deploying 4G, 5G infrastructure. Keep in mind that one LTE radios can cover 600 of tunnels right now. So that's why today mining companies are going to that path of 4G, 5G in order to and increase the speed to cover the whole mine basically with high-speed internet. So this is really changed as we are right now. It's a pretty good timing for mining companies that wants to be more efficient and use the industry 4.0 era right now.
Great, thanks. And you're talking about the 4G and 5G networks, but I mean, we all know that the one of the major supplier has had an issue with their network. I mean, does it mean that we would need redundancy or something like that?
We always need redundancy, and also we're always going to recommend on-premise equipment, like Chris was mentioning. It's all about balance. I don't think you want to put all your eggs in the cloud as it comes to mission critical application. Everything which is non-mission critical, there's no problem to put this in the cloud. To mission critical talk, remote control of machine, this is where you want to install a system on premise. And redundant system is really important as well for upgrade, because a mine works 24/7. So when you want to do a network upgrade, or if the network operator goes down, you still want to be able to operate. You cannot afford shutting down a mine for an outage or for an upgrade. So this is why we always recommend to have, of course, that redundant system on premise.
Very good. And would you recommend that I mean, having some spare equipment on site? I mean, to guarantee network availability. I mean, in terms of fiber optics, satellite hardware, switches, or any kind of equipments that you would recommend to have as a spare?
We do recommend, of course, spare equipment, whether it's cold spare or hot spare on site. And especially now, you've seen vendors has been having really long lead times, so you cannot afford waiting for a device or a component right now. So we do, of course, recommend spare backhaul, spare switches, routers, of course, on site. So if something happens, again, everything is fully redundant, so the mine will not be affected, but you want to quickly fix by using on spare equipment. So yes, we do always recommend this.
Okay, very good. Thanks. Now turning it back to you, Chris. I mean, what would you do when the internet connection gets lost? I mean, even if we have that redundancy and things like that, I mean, what has happened? I mean, what do we do when things go wrong? You know?
So I guess in our case, it's not so much the internet we're worried about. I guess as we move more to putting things in the cloud, that will be a concern. But from this backhaul concept that Eric was mentioning earlier, we have our own private network that goes from our general office area in Coppercliff to each of the mines, and we have redundant links from that communications central point to each of the mines. And then, as Eric was talking about, the LTE that happens underground. So you can imagine that what we're worried about is not so much internet going down, but our network going down. So one of the ways we protect ourselves is with that redundancy between the communication path. I guess the other thing to think about is with regards to outages that can affect us of that network. A major outage, we'll say, we haven't had any in quite a while, and with that, redundancy is our way to mitigate it. But we do suffer from, I'll say, technology difficulties now and then, as any company will, as you're putting in new things or things start to age out, they're going to start to fail a little bit. So it's in those situations where we have to, when we have these, I say, glitches, we have to make sure that we have processes. So the IROC has established contingency plans in the event of either a failure of the communications I was talking about, or even, say, one of our key applications that are kind of support the monitoring goes down. They make sure that they have these contingency plans, which will ensure minimal disruption to production until the problem is resolved, whether it's networking or application. So we're trying to make sure that for critical applications, I like the way that Eric named it, because we have that same classification where we say something's mission critical or business critical, and then we have like business operational as a kind of a third tier. And so for those ones that are critical, whether they're mission critical or business critical, we try to make sure that we have a redundancy in our software design, but also a backup process that the business themselves are going to be using when those applications or networks are not available.
Very good. And maybe with regards to that, we have a question actually from the audience. Eric, you might want to answer that question. I mean, what is your path to solve the challenge of the cloud-reliant solutions versus remote locations?
Well, I think it comes back again to we need to separate what is mission critical, what is non-mission critical. So when it comes to mission critical, a lot of mines don't want to rely on the cloud. When you remotely control machines, when you do push to talk, when you have like a PLC communication using Modbus, that has to stay local. However, for anything which is not mission critical, like IoT, predictive maintenance, big data, those are all stuff that can be on the cloud. So because, again, today with redundant internet backhaul, you can have a fairly robust solid backhaul, and you can use the cloud for those non-mission critical. So it really depends on what is the application, and definitely if you need a cloud-based application, it is possible using a redundant internet backhaul. But again, this is for non-mission critical use cases.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. And maybe, I mean, one thing that we did not cover yet is about security. I mean, how can we ensure security with all that data being transferred? Maybe, Eric, can you give us some advice on that?
Well, we see more and more attacks. Countries are trying to attack OT networks. So this is something which every time we design a network, we need to make sure that it is fully robust. And especially that now that we are remotely controlling machines, you cannot afford that somebody takes that machine remotely and do something. So a lot of our networks actually are not even connected to the internet to prevent this, basically. So, or part of the network is fully isolated from the internet. So, and a lot of the mines or a lot of companies, the first thing you're going to do if you have an attack is disconnect the internet. But you cannot afford stopping a mine if you get an attack. So that's why you need to be able to continue working and to have some kind of an on-premise network that will still be able to manage the operation of the mine, even though there's no more internet. So security is really, really important. Of course, we need to put a lot of firewalls in the solutions. And again, encryption even over the air is important. Even we have some OEMs that say that, okay, they don't trust anymore the Wi-Fi WPA2. They want to SIM card authentication, they want encryption end-to-end. So even local security is now even really important for some OEMs. Again, today we see more and more mines having fully autonomous machines. So those needs to be fully secured. So security indeed is very important.
Very good. Thank you very much. I would like to ask the audience. I mean, if anyone has some specific questions, please don't hesitate to ask your questions. We'll be happy to answer those as long as we can, of course. So let me see here. Do we have any questions from the audience? I think we do not have any other questions.
Maybe while we're waiting, Martin, I can give you a perspective from the mining operator around that same question that Eric just answered. So, and I think we are moving more and more to cloud, and there's definitely a direction that way. But we have to, as we move things into the cloud, we're trying to find the right balance. It's kind of my word of the day would be balance, right? Between what components fit properly in the cloud and which ones don't. And when Eric mentioned, the having to have the right network security, so we have kind of a segmented network where we have OT, and then we have a firewall, then we have a DMZ, and then we have a firewall, and then we have our business network, and another firewall till we get to the internet. So the concept of deciding which applications get hosted where, right now, anything that's business operational and running on, I'll say, our global IT network are usually things that we can move to the cloud. They're easy discussions. When things are hosted in that IDMZ area that's somewhere between OT and our business network, they're harder to actually pick up and consider to move to the cloud. And when we get down to the OT, now we're talking about things that are really, really hard discussions. Does it even make sense with today's technology to move these outside of this localized OT network? So from that concept, we have things that are easy to move at the business network, things that in that I want to say IDMZ, but a lot of times people think IDMZ is something between the business LAN and the internet. But in our case, this is an IDMZ between control and our business LAN, and that area is a little bit harder than the business network, and then the OT network, which is the closest to that mission critical definition that Eric said, is the ones that I don't think, given our current technology and comfort with production, I don't think we're ready to move those outside of, I'll say, site hosted networks for now. There is an interesting thing, since I'm on a little bit of a point here, is that there's a concept of having a failover to another geographic location, which is really exciting. So that if you have something that happened locally, you could have an image of all those virtual boxes at a geographic location other than the site. That is probably our first step, right? That I think most people are comfortable with, because you're in a situation you still have things locally, and your failover to another geographic site makes sense in that situation. It's different than saying, let's host all of our OT components offsite. It's kind of a hybrid.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. So we have a couple of questions coming in. So I'll start with this question here about the redundant infrastructure. So how do you set the balance between redundant infrastructure and the ability to repair quickly? So Eric, maybe you can take that question.
That's a pretty good question. And there's really two philosophies we see, especially underground. So in an underground mine, it's not always possible to have like redundant fiber. I mean, depending on how the mine has been designed, how the fiber has been laid out. So we see customers that they don't have redundant infrastructure underground, but they have they've been designing ways to quickly fix. If something happens, the fiber get cut, they can quickly fix it. So they minimize the downtime, because sometimes it's not even possible to have redundant backhaul underground. And sometimes, of course, it takes more component, and some mines, they do the balance. Okay, is it worth it to spend twice as much money underground for redundancy compared to quickly fixing the issue when it happens? So it's really, there's two philosophy out there, and I think it's case per case. Some mines will have the ability to do it physically. I mean, some mines don't have the ability to do it, so they will actually prefer to quickly fix and have spare parts underground. So it's really there's no answer, there's no ideal answer, because both are really used right now in the industry, and we can definitely support both.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. We have another question from the audience here. This question is for Chris. What is the current status of the IROC? Are all 3 sites now being run from the IROC?
Well, being run is probably not a good way to describe what we're doing, right? So the execution and the supervising is still all done locally. So it's that monitoring concept. So I can say that we have different, in an agile way, we're rolling out to the different mines, and to say that mine A and mine B are both doing everything the same way at 100%. I don't think we can say that. I would say that we've got 2 mines that are at a fairly good maturity, and we have 1 more that we're moving towards implementation and maturity. And I don't see, until we get to a point where we've been running this for a couple of years, we're not going to have that ability to say, oh, all the mines in Canada are running the processes 100% the same, and they're all at the same maturity. So, and I wouldn't use the term run. So that we have to think of what is the objective. The objective is to that monitor and look for, I say, problems or gaps with meeting the scheduled production is what we're doing currently.
Yeah, very good. Thanks a lot, and thanks for clarifying the aspect of being running a mine. This is a very important topic. We have another question here. Let me see here. Has there been any discussion around a shared infrastructure program supported through the mining companies and mining suppliers to ensure network uptime for remote operations? So I don't know if Eric, maybe you can take that one. Are you aware of something like that?
I mean, there's more and more program like SIMI and Mika that have funding to develop a new solution for the underground. And of course, when a solution is good for one mine, it's good for all the other mines. So of course, we will always try to see what is currently out there without reinventing the wheels, right? So definitely, we'll look forward for anyone to see what is currently doing using those programs right now. So I don't know if the question was around funding programs or more about knowledge sharing, but one thing that we've been doing, for your information, is in the past years before COVID, we used to bring all mining companies that have similar technologies together so they can share, okay, I've done this, how it was done. And that was really valuable because, as we mentioned, usually all mining companies are similar, they have similar needs. So I think that's one of the things we recommend, is to do those kind of knowledge sharing session. We bring all of those mining companies in a room and we share those experiences. That's what I will recommend.
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Thank you, Eric. So I think that's it for today. Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you, Chris and Eric, for this panel. I think I would like to thank also the BDT organization, Beyond Digital Transformation, for setting it up. BDT is also looking for sponsorships for other streams. Of course, if you have any interest in sponsoring those events, please contact Neha Singh via team@pace.global. So we have a couple of streams: community and collaboration, development and design, power and possibilities, people and partnerships. So those are all streams that you can support. Of course, please remember to join us on November 22nd, where we will be having another panel talking about using operations data to improve decision making for production and maintenance. And of course, I'd like to thank our sponsors for supporting this event. And of course, again, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Eric. I think this was a very good panel. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us further or later on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.